Finally, we are at the end. Only took 2 months for every hour this video is long. If you can decipher what that means. If you can understand what I just said. The final game, the final section of the video, and what could be more fitting than The Walking Dead, the final season. Oh baby, it's so exciting, it's almost worth buying twice. And I bet Telltale would have appreciated that. Yeah, so I mentioned a long while ago that I kind of ended up buying this game twice due to an addiction I had procured. Basically, I got fucking hooked out of my mind on Steam trading cards and leveling up my account and unlocking all the badges, and look, it was really bad. It got so out of hand at one point that I was legit banned from the Steam marketplace for a full year because my account was clearly suspicious in how frequently I was selling and buying items. In fact, that little wrinkle even led me to almost being scammed on Steam because I was so convinced by the scam because it was related to my incessant purchasing on the marketplace. Looking at you, Lawrence. If you know, you know. So, why is that important? Well, it's bloody important because I pre-ordered the game, realized it wasn't going to release for another 2 months, refunded it, and used that same money to just buy more trading cards again. And then when I actually pre-ordered the game for real, about a month later, I ended up buying a Steam gift card that meant I would have money left over for more bastard trading cards. Genuinely, it was really bad. But what about the game? Was it really bad? Well, when I first played it, you'll of course know that I absolutely adored the first episode. I said as much 17 hours ago. It was such a return to form, with great characters, a great setting, a relaxed pace, and a looming threat. And one of those. My feelings on the rest of the game were less positive, with each episode arguably getting worse as the season went on, besides maybe episode 3 beating out episode 2. I always really wanted to believe that the game was great, but mostly I could only manage a pretty good, and I never really thought about the game much after the fact, which is a shame since I even said in that original video that if the game kept that same quality, it would rival Season 1. Bold claim. So bold that it's actually the reason I never made a full video despite somewhat wanting to. I loved the first episode so much that everything else fell flat for me a little, so I didn't really have the desire to revisit it. Ultimately, I still liked it because I just tend to like things and it's not as if it was an awful game. Maybe it's the way that I played it. I mean, by the time the second episode came out, I'd already played that first episode 3 times, and this is how I played the game, as I was of course playing it on release. What I would do is play the new episode, but the day before it, I would replay the previous episode, and then replay the new episode a day before the next new episode. I don't know if that did anything, but like most things really, waiting a few months to do another bit of something isn't preferable to just doing it in a week or so. But I'm very happy to retort myself and say that after replaying the game, yeah, it's really great, and not just that first episode, which I expectedly still loved. To mostly my surprise, this ended up being one of my favorite games I played, even landing in my top 3 above The Wolf Among Us, putting it right behind The Walking Dead Season 1. Hello there. Also, it's arguably the most consistently good game Telltale has ever made. Every single episode, of which there are 4, ended up being the exact same rating. The game starts good, is good throughout, and ends good. What a concept! And since it's a similar sounding word, I've been talking about context a lot in this video and how so much of Telltale's output would be dramatically improved where there are more in-universe contextual reasons for them occurring. This season, more than most, has a lot of that throughout. A lot of the annoying or questionable elements of other games really work here because of the framework they're in. And there's a weird, almost teen dystopian vibe to this season, and if you know me, you know I bloody love a bit of the Maze Runner, and I'm also fond of a bit of the Hunger Games, but only the first one and the one everyone hates because it too has a de-emphasized plot and instead has to fill itself with small character moments. Also, since I'm bastard here anyway, why the fuck didn't Thomas and Brenda get together? Their dynamic and chemistry was far more compelling and unique than Thomas and Teresa. I'm still mad about it. Hell, I'd have been fine with Thomas and Newt. That final letter was gay as fuck. Anywho, thankfully after the last game, I have a lot to say about this one. It's kind of a done running trend at this point that the Walking Dead games are the ones I really feel strongly about, for better or worse. I just picked this one up the other day. Many such cases. Yes, now. And while Season 4 does have a lot of great little things and moments, it's actually more in its bigger ideas and concepts and questions that I find value or worth. The game strikes big and, for the most part, I think it makes a hit. Oh yes. I like to think of this season as basically the first season, but more. All the unspoken and subconscious elements are more directly presented and touched on, but that sounds bad and it's actually good, the ways they explore it.
Mate.
Really good, that.
Yeah. Ali yoga. I'm ready for it.
That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
The game also plays with the illusion of choice idea in a pretty neat way. Hopefully I can actually explain why and make it make sense in my non-committal and insecure fashion. Episode 1 is a little tricky to talk about. Much like A New Frontier, I've already talked about it. In case I didn't mention, the initial plan for all this video was just to be an isolated video on the Back to the Future game, but then my mind spiraled until I got here, which tends to happen. So now we are here, covering a singular episode that I've talked about before. What to do? See, I didn't want to make the Back to the Future video and then do this video on top of it, only to get to Back to the Future and be like, okay guys, time to go watch the 30-minute standalone video and then come back. The episode starts in great fashion, almost acting as a reversal of the first season's introduction. This time, we find the swing before crashing a car. I love the way the game showcases this change in perspective, going from the forced camera angle to, for the first time in any of these games, a third-person view, further making it seem like a real game, but in a good way. I really like this change. The game also immediately makes more of an intention with Clementine and AJ's dynamic, and how the things you do and the ways you act will impact on AJ. I said that weird. In the first game, it was far more unspoken between Clementine and Lee. They didn't seem to be setting up a sequel where you played as Clementine, and so there wasn't much of an overt attempt to make you think about how it may affect her in the long run. Here, the game is full of that stuff, and I like it. You just feel it more. It's fine as it is in Season 1, I just noticed how much more they presented in this final season. Almost immediately we are met with a choice to put AJ in danger or respect the wishes of two people who are now walkers, which feels odd but will make sense in some episodes' time. I sent AJ through the little gap, as Bonnie and Mike once did to Clementine herself, and there's just a funny contradiction in that, realizing how stupid it is but doing it anyway. It's not groundbreaking, but already I am stressing and doubting my choices. The combat has also been fairly overhauled, again likening it to a more traditional game, but given the inherent jank of Telltale, it actually makes it a little challenging and it's really easy to get overwhelmed. You're mostly still just pressing buttons, but now you can move and hey, that's a video game. That's a video game. It is as simple as stunning a walker, still using that trick Jane showed her, but now in-game, which I love to see, or not doing that, but it just makes it all feel a little more interactive, and I won't complain about that. I think I did at several points earlier, but I am not in any sense consistent, so I refuse to be held accountable for the nonsense that I spit out. Frankly, you shouldn't have been standing there. The location of a boarding school for juvenile delinquents is also an inspired choice. The whole kids versus adults thing seems inherently allegorical, and since these kids reside in a boarding school for well, I just said that. And since these kids reside in a boarding school for juvenile delinquents, it's no wonder there's a bit of a rebellion ting when the topic of child soldiers is introduced. For now, we get to meet all the new characters, and the pacing slows right down after that car crash bollocks. Mitch and Willie here think AJ is hilarious because he said fuck. A sim is chronicling the day's events in a history book of sorts. AJ apologizes to Ruby for biting her. We see Violet and Ten, short for Tennessee, tending to his twin sister's graves. Oh, that's grim. We earlier met Lewis whilst playing the piano, and of course are initially shown about the place by leader Marlin. He'll soon be full of lead, though. Anyway, I really like the characters of this game, and I think it's nice that Clementine finally gets to interact with kids her age. Clementine being looked to as the voice of reason in a group full of adults wasn't totally believable, but this, yeah, I can totally buy this. One of the reasons I wasn't so hot on the game initially is because that aforementioned looming threat became not so looming after the first episode. I really loved the cagey and internal conflict of this first episode, and seeing it all play out uninterrupted before some random group comes and ruins our shit was a treat. I spoke highly of the sequence where Clementine happens upon Marlin and Brody arguing, how tense it felt, and all of that is still spot on. As we know, Marlin in his cowardice and frustration bashes Brody's head with a flashlight when she reveals that Marlin gave away Ten's twin sisters to this random group to keep the others safe. What commences is still such a great scene of horror. Brody's wound is genuinely gross, her head is busted and the blood fills in one of her eyes. She can't even see. Oh my word, just typing that out has got me rattled. It's horrific. Also, these guttural and unhuman groans from Brody, the fucking clap of the thunder, it's genuinely a masterpiece of a sequence, even on replay. And I still adore that detail of Clementine using the flashlight to also bash her face until it's crimson covered. A lot of face bashing here. The following confrontation is also still great, AJ fucking shooting Marlin's head off before he can even utter a word. Well, a sentence maybe. He says a few words. What a moment. I aimed for the head. Oh, this little psychopath is something else. And they do some really compelling shit with him and the general idea of raising a kid in a world like this. You'll also notice that he repeats whatever you said to him, and he even finds the bullet that he uses in this very beginning, as he didn't have any beforehand. This is also such a great inverse of my kill the kid thing, you know, Telltale jumping the shark in some feigned attempt at poignancy and emotional impact and shock value. Now, the kid is doing the killing, and I love that more than words could ever describe. And going forward, it's only going to be kids dying, so it won't ever feel like they're trying to kill the kid, even though they are, literally. Great episode, though not as fantastic as I first thought, but this doesn't surprise me because I really fucking went to bat for this thing way back when. So it's not quite the world beater I once thought, but it's still very good and very long. This season overall ended up being also the most consistently long game, I would say. Each episode is near 3 hours, and each subsequent episode is like 4 minutes shorter than the last one, so it's really tight. I would still consider this episode better than most of Season 2 and all of A New Frontier, but I've also probably played it far too many times now. Episode 2 starts, and it's a hell of an awkward way to do so, interspersing Clem and AJ awakening from the previous night with moments that immediately followed AJ's murdering. Awkward in a good way, seeing everyone losing their minds about it. And I love how if you tell AJ he is a murderer, he will try to rationalize it by saying Clementine also is because she killed Lee. Obviously not meant with any malice, but it's just interesting to see him not realize the difference and context of these moments. And there's a lot of great weird stuff like that in the game, seeing these mature and horrific things from a child's perspective, having been raised amongst it all. I also wondered what might happen had you endeared yourself to Lewis instead of Violet. Lewis was Marlon's best friend, meanwhile Violet was in a relationship with one of Ten's sisters, so if Violet ended up covering for Marlon or being really mad about it all as Lewis was, that'd be strange. But I'm not sure that does happen because I lean toward Lewis initially and I do believe he has the same reaction. All this to say, that's good. The characters don't just exist to fill certain roles that facilitate the story. They actually have their own set positions and won't randomly switch up on you because the choice demands it. Why would Lewis side with us as Violet does after what AJ did? He wouldn't, and he doesn't, as far as I can tell. In fact, he's one of the main supporters of kicking Clem and AJ out of the school, which actually happens. We just bastard got here, and we're already being evicted. While it is more internal squabbling and not seeing the bigger picture, it is understandable that they see it like we've ruptured their little haven, killed their leader, and brought raiders in tow. It'd be hard to just be hit with knowing that your leader traded or gave away whole people to protect himself and you. It's such a conflicting situation. In that way, I suppose the choice doesn't matter or change anything drastically, unless I'm completely wrong about all this, but it makes the story and characters far more consistent and believable. And it's not like what happened was because of a choice we made, so what would even be undermined here? This comes up again at some point, the game sort of negating your choice, but as I've been saying, I think it can work contextually. Otherwise, the first hour is okay and I don't have much to say about it as the episode really comes together in its second half. I guess Lily does reappear for the first time since Season 1 Episode 3, but no one cares about that. In an attempt to fortify the already fortress-like school, we go all home alone and head to the greenhouse for some supplies. I don't know how the greenhouse relates. Oh yeah, we end up coming back to the school because AJ got shot, so they mostly welcome us back with arms wide open. Whoa, that was pretty good actually. I've never even attempted to do that, but that was actually pretty alright. God. Man like Mitch does have a good rebuttal to my saying, why would AJ have been shot if we were raiders, with maybe he shot one of their friends. Love that from you, Mitch. Earn that paycheck. He doesn't trust us, you see, and why would he? I actually quite like the bickering here, the childish shit-slinging insults, maybe because they're kids this time. It's not Season 1 levels, but it's patient and feels genuine. I like the interactions as Mitch prepares to make a bomb and Ruby wants to bury the nurse who stayed when all the other teachers left them behind. The greenhouse is swarmed with walkers, at least 2 of them. The combat continues to give me surprising and welcome challenge, because goddamn, you really just die if you don't break them up and try to get in a good position. They come at you from the side or back when you're killing one, it's an instant death. Earlier in the episode I stunned one of them and took out 2 more, only for that stunned one to get back up and eat me. I even paused the game momentarily, I must have shat myself. Again, the combat is relatively simple, but it's also super fluid and at least requires some effort. It's been 2 weeks since the House of Green, and my word, they've been hard at work, because this courtyard looks hilarious. What the fuck? They've got Walker heads stumped on, well, stumps, a flagpole with a sign saying, fuck raiders. I guess they're not a fan of that first one. There's even a massive sign strewn across the main balcony saying, leave or die. It's so childish, it's exactly what a bunch of kids would probably do. As if a walker head is going to scare them, that's great. Bless them, they're trying. Lewis will also apologize and opens up about how he left Marlin to do all the heavy lifting while he slacked off, made jokes and dicked around. He's probably feeling like it wouldn't have come to what it did had he helped out more. There's also another nice scene of the characters just hanging out and playing Truth or Dare. At one point, Ten reveals that he believes the walkers will just die out and things will go back to normal. The tone of my answer was not as intended, but it's true that they'll all be dead before that probably definitely happens. It's this weird blend of childlike despair and misery as opposed to wonderment. Since usually a child character in a post-apocalyptic game acts as a beacon or symbol of hope or change, where here everyone is just already resigned to the world as it is. It's further exacerbated by a peculiar scene where AJ wants dibs on Abel, even asking to... Have I mentioned Abel? Have I even mentioned who Abel is?
Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Anyway, even asking to play rock, paper, scissors to be the one that kills him. Even after Marlin and trying to atone, it's just very morbid and weird and funny how childish and unfazed he is by that. I mean, hell, the stoners from 400 Days were using the same system just to decide who would leave the car. This kid wants to add another body to the list and does so through games and asking permission to do a murder. It's strange. The final battle that we've been building towards is also good, and I think it's really neat that so much of it is dictated by the characters. The way it plays out is an extension of them, with Mitch's bomb and either Willy or Sim's trap, and the aforementioned whole design here. Once again, we just go full Home Alone on their asses. There's even a choice to kill Lily abruptly, which naturally ends in a death. I know I complained about it a lot in Game of Thrones, but when it's this quick and obvious in terms of plausibility, I really don't mind it as the game giving you the choice to do it, because you would realistically die straight away. Still mad about it in Game of Thrones though. Anywho, Mitch does get 360'd by Lily in a very sudden death that she does seem regretful or at least shaken by, though I imagine it's more her realizing that's one less soldier they have. And Abel has a really bad day as things escalate. He also sounds exactly like Nolan North when he's exerting or in pain, but it wasn't him, and I knew it wasn't, so that was distracting. Dude totally gets mauled and then fucking speared off the balcony. Goddamn, is this Wolf Among Us? Lewis ends up getting captured as I saved Violet, though he tackled Lily to save Clementine after she hesitated. We were like family once, you see. Oh yeah, Lily is still here. Despite being genuinely likable in Season 1, it is kind of a masterstroke to have Lily be almost the villain of this season. Admittedly, it's a little odd, and even if you cast Lily aside way back when, it might be kind of jarring or hard to believe, but I think it's kind of clever to almost mirror Lily's return with Kenny. Lily was always more outwardly an asshole, but Kenny had to unravel and lose everything to reach that point, and it felt depressing and avoidable. With Lily, it feels far more natural to become someone that will survive at any cost, especially after what she went through. Not to say Kenny's like a great person, he killed her dad, you know. They're all, you know, shades of grey. I don't know if that even means anything, but I guess it's just neat that the character who was maybe unfairly sidelined in favor of Kenny now returns as the asshole that those people would have always seen her as, siding against her and backing up Kenny at every point. I can imagine some not liking this for that same reason though. I just think it's interesting. She's completely unhinged, and Clementine only serves to remind her of the earlier days. There's seemingly no hint or sense of redemption, unlike with Kenny. It kinda made me wonder what it'd be like if we ran into Lily in Season 2 instead. Would she still be this way, or would we be able to reason with her? After all, the player character could have been explicitly involved in Lily's downfall in episodes 2 and 3 instead of it being implicit, so maybe she would be reasonable. Because as alluded to in Season 2, I think all this Lily stuff is just to show how certain people devolve and lose themselves further into the apocalypse we go.
That's what he said. That's what he said, Ross.
Just,
Yes,
you know,
have faith.
You're speaking words. You're like, you sound like a pretentious arsehole. I guess we'll move on then, will we? Yes.
Good episode. The second half kind of evened out to be about the same exact quality and length as episode 1. And with that, ladies and elves, we are finally done. The video is over. Goodbye. Wait a second. Did you think I was going to cover the whole game?
Yes.
Why would I do that? The title very clearly details the games released by Telltale, and technically, this was the final one Telltale actually made. Oh well, I guess we're already here and have wasted over a whole year to do so, but this was actually the 100th episode I played, so it had been a fitting place to stop. Well, not counting Jurassic Park, but I don't, and I doubt you do. It's worth mentioning before getting into the second half of the final season that when the episodes first released, I distinctly remember some big stuttering issues, and I would know. I don't think I went a few seconds without it, also while playing, and I just chalked immediately proved my point, and I just chalked it up to the episodes being maybe cobbled together after Telltale's collapse. Luckily, it is not an issue now, at least in the definitive edition. Also, worth saying that it is absolutely fair fucking play to the people who worked at Telltale, were told they had to pack up and leave within 30 minutes, only to move to a whole other developer to continue making this game, all the while awaiting severance packages that may or may not have come anytime soon. That is unprecedented levels of dedication and commitment, so honestly, shout out for that. That's going above and beyond, and then some more to finish a game for us smelly moronic virgins to play, so it's a job well done, and a job that I hope most would totally understand not getting done. Even if this game ended up being a disaster, it wouldn't matter. The effort involved in making it was tremendous and unnecessary. And seeing how the employees were treated and their passion was abused, like most AAA game studios, it's genuinely amazing that they were still so committed to just finishing their story. Adrenaline in my soul. Cody Rhodes didn't finish the story. Okay. Episode 3 begins, and we interrogate Abel in the basement to find their basement of operations. After a smoke, he starts coughing up blood, and it's clear he's done for, even begging for mercy to not turn into a walker. They really linger on AJ afterward, which furthers Season 1's feeling of in-the-moment consequence and impact, but if I am being totally fair, it's not as if every single little thing that Clementine does comes back to bite her because of it being imparted onto AJ. I don't think that's realistic to expect. It might even feel a little artificial if every moment of choice was just there to set up AJ obeying or disobeying it. I like it in this unspoken way. You can see that he's taking in what just happened. There is a scene later on where AJ remarks on Abel's eyes, and that'll probably be important later. Also, you can find a sketch toy, and I genuinely thought for a moment that we were going to get Abel to draw a map on it, showing where their base was. This would have been hilarious, a toy being used by some kids in an interrogation of an adult. And yes, I did later attempt to etch-a-sketch a penis. It was alright, the veins especially looked good. In my veins.
The dirty bitch who used to do that.
And the irony of their base being yet another boat, commanded by Lily of all people, is not lost on me. In the previous episode, we met a kind of wacky fellow named James, who acts as a pseudo-shepherd for walkers, storing them in a barn and using them to travel undetected. He also believes that there may still be some remnant of the prior person within the walker, not wanting them to be harmed or bothered, and they seemingly won't do the same to us. This is important because we're trying to convince the guy to let us use his herd as bait to get onto the ship. This makes for an interesting gameplay moment, as James has this walker face skin mask that he uses to blend in with them, and currently does not have it with him. Seems like the Raiders were here. Which, side note, I love that we just call these guys Raiders. They aren't the New Frontier or some other nonsense. It's just a pack of Raiders. That's all they are. They don't matter. So we are tasked by him to distract and stun the walkers, which you can completely disregard if you so desire. I still ended up having to kill one of them because it jumped me, but I like that it feels almost unavoidable as the game throws so many walkers on you. James's philosophy is an interesting one, but clearly flawed. He seems to understand that you can't spare all of them, but that's what he would probably like. And unless you had a big community, you couldn't coexist with them, and even then, you're actively separating yourself from them. We find out later this is all due to a traumatic and violent past, which, as I'm writing this, does feel a little bit like how characters will reveal their backstory and how it relates to your current situation, but I guess I didn't really feel it in the moment. It's also not just some offhand comment. It actually comes into play at a later point and is used to reflect on how we are raising AJ. And even if it was an offhand comment, that'd be fine. It just usually feels like someone is gagging to tell you about their pain, and that's fine also, but usually I just don't know you like that yet. But given how much I've complained about these forced and uninspired dynamics where everyone is fighting, I'm surprised that didn't resonate way more with James's philosophy. I guess I gave a damn this time about the fighting. All this to say, James asks us to go into his barn to see if up close and personal they really are just monsters. The game goes first person and you just watch them become enamored by a wind chime. I get it, but I still don't buy that there are people in there. Unfortunately, that's exactly what I told him, and then I told AJ that I only said it because he wanted to hear it, effectively lying, which AJ took as being a good thing. The game even tells you that AJ learned there is value in lying. If nothing else, it's a new idea, and I think had we mentioned Jane's approach, we could easily be looking at a cushy compromise here. It's also interesting to recall that very first choice in the train station, and how I left those two walkers alone like they as humans requested. I was willing to do it there because I knew beforehand, which immediately made a kind of connection to them, and there's no way to do that with these guys. I don't know, just worth mentioning, I guess.
Yeah.
Why have you put zombies in there?
They're not zombies, they're just friends.
Clem and AJ, before all this, have a talk about trauma, and I find this stuff very intriguing. They talk about how AJ has it, trauma, like the other kids do. He can't understand why Ten and Willy don't know the things that he knows, how they make mistakes that he would never make. The episode actually began with Willy chewing out Ten for causing Mitch's death after Lily tried to tempt Ten about his sisters. So AJ is mad with Willy for blaming Ten, but also mad with Ten for making a seemingly stupid mistake. He automatically assumes that they should know better because he knows better. I don't have much for that, but it's again just funny and interesting hearing it that way from a kid's perspective without considering all the nuances. It's nothing new in idea, but in execution it is. There was also a great moment in the prior episode that I didn't mention, but AJ says he doesn't feel safe sleeping and thinks he could stay up forever, which is something I imagine most kids have thought before. It actually feels like the kids in this game are kids instead of glorified adults, which in and of itself is kind of ironic because of how typically fast these worlds age children in media. After a pretty nice little hootenanny where the kids have one final calm night before the boat siege, which also I was sure took place in the final episode, but I guess not, and also a super nice flashback on the train with Man Like Lee, which all makes for a much needed reprieve in the pacing. That sentence didn't really make sense. I'm not sure how I felt about it before, but I like it and would liken it to the only genuinely great scene of The Rise of Skywalker, where Ben Solo essentially imagines a conversation with his father to reconcile his feelings and say one word for the remainder of the film. Never gonna get over it. Apparently, this is a real life thing people do regarding feelings of trauma and losing a loved one before getting to say goodbye. Though in Ben's case, well, you know, could have been avoided. Anyway, we learn of James's past. Now, if I were to say the Whisperers, I'm sure that would mean something to some of you. Somehow, I found out that they are a group in the TV show, almost certainly also the comics. If that does mean anything to you, and this little reveal popped you, well, there you go. Basically, he and his boyfriend Charlie used to be ruthless killers, even going so far as to on the spot slit a kid's throat for expressing sympathy toward their enemies. With the kid's final words echoing in his mind, he vowed to never kill again, and it's no wonder he decides to help us since this situation is quite similar to his own, with kids being traded and brainwashed and trained to become soldiers. Even in a zombie apocalypse, we're at war. Yeah. There's also just a super fucking interesting moment here, with James believing that AJ could be headed down the same dark path, already being younger than he was when he first killed someone. He also says how when AJ expressed regret about killing Marlon, it sounded more like he was repeating what he had been told, not like he actually believed it. This got my mind going crazy, and I started to think how fucking cool and unique it would be if, even after all your lessons and teachings and attempts and choices to steer AJ the right way, maybe he is just set on this path and can't be changed, and in that way, your choices won't have mattered. AJ's own sense of self would have contextually outweighed the player trying to not make that so. Oh, I was so close. You know, illusion of choice in that. So we storm the boat finally, with AJ and Violet, or Lewis, in tow. We are able to momentarily turn Minerva to our side, as we actually encountered her earlier in the episode. This is one of Ten's sisters, by the by. Unfortunately, she quite quickly betrays us and locks us in with the others, so brainwashed and believing that we're all going to die, and it's Clementine's fault for putting the other kids at risk.
What does she mean? That's not true.
Lewis is also in this here padded cell with us and has had his tongue cut out, which is so painfully ironic. Also, I really like that the cardboard is specifically broken in this way so we can see AJ. That's funny to me. Anyway, Anywho, Lily takes interest in AJ after he reveals that he was the one to kill Marlon. Ten will appear and be goaded into shooting Lily, by Lily, but he of course cannot bring himself to do so. AJ, on the other hand, attacks Lily, and it leads to a fight wherein you can eventually tell AJ to shoot and kill Lily. And I did that, and I feel weird about it because he shoots her, and then he keeps shooting her, and he doesn't stop shooting her. On the one hand, good lord, she had become such an evil cunt, brainwashing these kids to the point where Minerva killed her and Ten's sister for trying to escape. It's so harrowing and genuinely frustrating in a good way. I felt legitimately mad at Lily, and against James's wishes, I let AJ kill her. It feels right, but it will undoubtedly impact him. Even if she wasn't a threat in the moment, it feels more complicated than that. Then a bomb goes off and that's our end. Crikey, hell of an ending it was. The way I just threw in that bomb probably seems random and contrived to end the episode, but it actually isn't at all, because it's the first thing we do when on the boat, planting it in the boiler, and they even say it'll blow in like 30 minutes, which the game is only a few minutes short of. And I like when a character says something will happen in an allotted time, and it actually does in that time. One of my very initial concerns was the looming threat becoming a present threat, but it all panned out exceptionally well, and before even the final episode, which I really like. The fact we can just kill Lily in this way is great. It's so sudden, and she's just gone like that. I also like that we don't see this supposed war Lily was a part of with her bigger group and some other group. Like, who cares? It only matters in the way that it was relevant to Clementine and getting those kids back, which I'm fine with, this smaller slice of the bigger pie. Yeah. I've had enough of that pie, thanks. I also realised that all this child soldier stuff is meant to juxtapose with how Clem is raising AJ. It shows how people view children in this world. Are they soldiers in a group like anyone else? Do you shelter them like Sarah? Do you try to prepare them for the horrors of the world? Some are better than others, but none seem like a perfect option. It worked out for Clementine, but AJ isn't Clementine, and I like how there's a clear difference with Clementine already being older than AJ was when all this started, compared to AJ being born during this time and already being far more capable and willing to murder. So that's something, probably. If I didn't consider the first 3 episodes of this game all equally great, I'd definitely give the best ending to this episode. In fact, it's so good that this episode probably just creeps into my favourite of the whole game. There is great drama throughout. It's also still pleasantly long. I guess we did get Terrence involved. Longer isn't better, so they say, but you can do so much more with that extra hour, and they routinely haven't. And they routinely have, even if I uncharacteristically haven't jizzed a lot of it. What? Oh, the smaller moments, yeah. With Season 1, it's kind of an open book. Everyone knows it's good and has probably played it, so I don't feel bad talking about little moments that are very inconsequential. I don't have numbers, but I can almost assure you that Season 4 did not do as well as Season 1, or probably even Season 2. So I guess I want to preserve those smaller moments so that you would get to subjectively and contextually experience. Aren't I so great? You're welcome. Thanks for sitting through 9 hours to get to this point. Hope it was worth it.
You know we belong together.
I get the first line.
You and I together and ever. No matter where you are, you're my guiding star.
From the very first moment I saw you.
Saw
You wrote these down.
I
I
know.
never felt such emotion. I'm walking on air. Just to know.
Just to know
You are there.
you are there. Hold me in your arms.
Don't let me go. I want to stay forever. Closer each day.
Closer each day.
Closer each day. Roman and Jay.
Roman and Jay.
There's the bit. There's
Worth
the
it.
bit.
It was long and worth it.
Well, here we are. The final episode of the final season of the final game. So, it's all led to this. Can Telltale, but not under Telltale, truly take us back to the glory days? Well, in a word, yes, but in a way that probably angered people. It's quite fitting that for not really, but mostly kind of Telltale's final ever episode, they managed to really branch out and account for your choice, while simultaneously doubling down and sticking to their perpetual guns, negating your choice. But, as ever, context wins out, and this episode does something that I think is just really neat and feels totally earned given how much of a focus your choices have had with regards to Alvin Jr. That's his name, by the way. Though I will immediately say it's easily the worst episode of the game. I still rated it the exact same because it's still good, but it was very obviously the weakest overall, and if it had cut some of the fat in certain places, I wouldn't have been mad about its slightly shorter length. Maybe one of those 7 fake-out endings would do it. It's really not a deal breaker though, and I am still more than happy with how it all came together. We'll get on with it then. The episode has a heck of a start as well, as we climb and traverse the now exploded boat. Almost immediately as well, Clementine's hat falls into the water below, gone forever. It's a very intentional thing to do, what with it being the only thing Clementine still had from the old world. Then a spider appeared on my desk, ruining the moment. The others escape as Minerva comes swinging an axe, having been bitten twice, and her grenade scares the horses off. So Clem, AJ, and Ten meet up with James, and after a nonchalant and jank little jog, take refuge in a cave system. Oh yeah, it's another tunnel episode, the final one, and we're back in the tunnels, baby. Only for a little while though. Once again, Season 4 plants more intriguing questions in the foggy mind of yours truly, as James suddenly decides to try and take AJ away from Clementine, believing that she is not fit to raise him and only he can redirect AJ in his clear bloodlust. With AJ saying that he liked killing Lily, it's not hard to see why James feels this way, and it all makes more sense to me than it did before. It's questionable, but it's also hard to argue with him feeling joy from killing people who make them unsafe or want to harm them. It's a super interesting conversation from AJ's perspective, because we as Clementine did tell him to kill Lily, but now we're confusing him by saying it was wrong and he can't enjoy doing it. Getting caught up in our own rage led to AJ unleashing his, and now he can't understand why what he did was wrong, because we told him to do it, so it must have been right? I really enjoyed the way the game and AJ get you thinking about your choice and the effect of it, AJ questioning us after he just did exactly what we told him to do, and then some. It's also very neat that this entire confrontation doesn't happen if you don't let AJ kill Lily, because instead, James is killed by Lily, therefore negating and removing this entire scene because there would be no debate or argument about letting AJ do another murder. That's probably just very obvious and stupid of me to mention, but I appreciate that had I played it a different way, James wouldn't have just survived and still called me out for doing something that I didn't do. I know it's happened before. James will of course leave in a huff after doing the classic animation, thank you, haven't seen it in a while, but the implications of the next choice were weighing on me heavy after all this, knowing where it leads. Do you now trust AJ to shoot only the bad people when it's right to do so, or do you not trust him to make that decision himself? Well, we'll come back to that. Before coming back to that very suddenly, I just realised on the YouTubes that you can actually talk James down and the scene plays out entirely differently. Instead of leaving you in a huff, he will kill the walkers and defend you so everyone can get away. What the fuck? I didn't even know this was possible. Yet another moment where your choice actually does matter, and not in the binary this or that style of usual. What a thing to witness. I'm overselling it a bit, but that seems genuinely impressive once again, and I don't know if it actually is, or if I'm just genuinely shocked and in awe by Telltale doing anything slightly more progressive than what we've seen. We continue back to the school and reconvene with Violet before approaching a bridge and a gap at the end of said bridge. Suddenly, Minerva rocks up singing her version of the song Violet was singing, which I didn't mention. In tow are a pack of walkers, and it's almost an inverse of Lee's march through the walkers to get to Clementine, Minerva parading them around and almost summoning them to her call. It's a really great visual, and hearing her sing from afar is very creepy. There's a really interesting gameplay moment here as you're taking cover from Minerva while also firing arrows at the walkers. At one point, I actually caught the slightest and quickest glimpse of Minerva, so I without thought tried to shoot her, and the game seemingly reacted to it by having her in a cutscene grab a walker to take my arrow. It must have been a scripted animation, but it was fucking seamless in the moment, and definitely preferable to just being shot in the head and having a game over screen because I didn't play along properly. Anywho, this whole moment actually does make your choice matter. If you tell AJ he can't be trusted, as I did, he won't be able to bring himself to shoot 10 as he attempts to reason with his sister, who is definitely just going to kill him. Instead, Violet is eaten by walkers for her trouble, and 10 at the last minute is thrown across by her. But if you did trust AJ to make the call, he will mercilessly shoot 10 and Violet will escape. Either way, someone dies because of what you decided prior, so the choice has a genuine and felt consequence. I remember on my first go, I had this happen with Lewis instead of Violet, and I was heartbroken. I even recalled an image in my mind of Lewis, Violet, and 10 all at the school together at the end, but I guess that can't happen at all. I suppose it is another classic moment where someone dies regardless, but again, it's the context that makes it significant. Though being the weirdo I am, I can't help but wonder if it might have been more powerful and subversive to have AJ doubt himself, or Clementine, even if you do, or don't, trust him, to the point where the opposite happens depending on your choice. Imagine if you didn't trust AJ and he still did shoot 10, disobeying Clementine because he still thinks he knows best, but I suppose that actually wouldn't make sense now given what's transpired. Okay, I guess I talked myself out of that one real quick, and it's actually perfectly fine as it is, but more on that idea later. By later, I mean just probably the next thing I mention. Also, I love this little moment where 10 does the little knee kick stun that Jane taught Clementine. Just seeing that these kids are actually learning from her is neat. Oh, and Clementine is also sliced in the ankle by Minerva and casually bitten by a walker in the exact same spot. I got bit, says Clem, as Nick spins in his grave at terminal velocity. I tried to figure out if there was some nonsense wankery symbolism for Clementine being sliced by an axe, the very weapon Lee is shown using in the poster, and Clementine mirrors it, while also being bitten in the same spot as Lee was too bitten on the wrists where at first he was handcuffed. Oh shit, I didn't even realize that until I wrote it down right then. Phew. What does that mean? Not sure what it means for Clementine though, and really the Lee thing was quite obvious. Maybe if she instead had a meat cleaver. I don't know what that means. Yeah, what did I mean by that? I guess he used it at the end, but like, what did I mean otherwise? Alright. Anywho, 10 is separated from Clem and AJ, and it all occurs as they try to climb a rock formation hill thing. It's kind of subtle, the walker bites her shoe, and so you might think it doesn't get through. It's so normal as well, they just got overwhelmed by a lot of them instead of a silly jump scare. As AJ and Clem hunker down in James's barn, the game seamlessly transitions to you controlling AJ. There's a weird feeling that is elicited by the fact that we're controlling AJ, yet also making choices as Clementine. I really have nothing for that, but I just thought it was strange as opposed to playing as Lee and instead telling Clem what to do, here being able to just do it. I guess that's more of just like a quality of life gameplay thing. Finally, there's no ammo left and Clementine is too far gone, so you make the decision once again, kill her or leave her. A line here really punctuates that childlike perspective I've mentioned, with Clem saying, "Be a good boy, kill me," which is so fucking dark. AJ goes to bring the axe down and we cut to Clementine on a horse. Well, first we cut to the loading screen for The Last of Us, but then to McCarroll Ranch, where AJ was being kept by someone. Anyway, this is significant because I just fucking killed Eddie from 400 Days. It was him, the beanie, the earrings, the voice. What is he doing here? I have never seen anyone fucking mention this. I genuinely could not believe my eyes, and we had just prior seen Fireflies. I don't even care if it's pointless fan service. That was awesome. And it can't even be fan service because who is being serviced here? Eddie was in the series, besides me clearly, Eddie was in the series for like 10 minutes and then they teased him for season 2, only for nothing to happen. Holy shit, what a slow burn build. They really planned this all out. For real though, what is he doing there? Why did they, the fact they bothered to put him there after the season 2 tease in that like episode picture, that's incredible. What a thing they've done there. Anyway.
Another one?
After Clementine retrieves AJ, the game cuts to AJ fishing with Rosie, the once headmaster's dog. I don't know if I ever mentioned the dog, but a part of the first episode is literally just about Clementine overcoming her trauma from a previous dog, which I think is pretty nice. 10 will also reappear. I actually forgot he was alive and expected his walker form to appear instead. He was ashamed for everything that happened and didn't return immediately, finding Minerva's body and seeing what the walkers did to her. It made him realize that there is no afterlife, he'll never get to see his sisters again. He doesn't want to be why someone else dies, so you can either teach him what you know, or not do that, and I don't know why you would. I also didn't mention that 10 had his own interesting philosophy on the walkers, believing that they all have somewhere to go when they die and that his sisters would be there waiting for him, seemingly even the walkers that killed them before they were walkers. My mind immediately went to that one Nightmare on Elm Street sequel where they're all connected in one person's dream, but in this scenario it's like everyone that is involved in your death. Sure. Also, just because I'm never going to mention A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 again, you know that movie, you know that X-Men offshoot movie, The New Mutants? You know, I mean, I know it because Anya Taylor-Joy watched it. I was a bit in love with her for a while, so I just watched all the movies she was in. I watched that movie. I thought it was actually alright. I thought it was fine. But the thing that kind of like, the lasting impression I had with that movie was that it's literally just A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. It's literally just a bunch of troubled teenagers in a like mental, psychological place, and they're all just like connected with each other in that way. I don't know if anyone else has made that connection, but I did, and you know I'm right. Now that you think about it, you know I'm right. Rewatch the movie through that lens. It's not that bad, to be honest. You know, watch it as like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and that ending part with the bear, watch that as if that's like a nightmare sequence and it's not even happening. It transforms the film. I mean, I don't actually know, but hey, there you go. Anyway, yeah, it's funny I've been mentioning like Jenna Ortega every opportunity because I'm like someone like Anya Taylor-Joy, like that's far more my jam. I mean, they're both, hey, they're both all right, you know. Okay, anyway.
I'm a sad man writing that sentence down.
Yeah.
10 also finds Clementine's hat, and AJ walks back to the school with the iconic Take Us Back song playing. He watches the other kids all pile in, closing the gate, and the camera pans to the school as we end. No, it doesn't end there. AJ walks inside, and Clementine is alive, but with leg missing and on crutches. Oh, I got a lot to say about this. Honestly, I'm glad she's alive. I know people have complained about her being bitten for too long where this wouldn't work, but I kind of just don't care about that shit. Also, Lee was bitten on the wrist and Clem on the ankle, and as we know, the brain is a lot further from the ankle than the wrist. How about that one? How about that one? I don't know if that actually means anything, but, you know. Also, it's clearly more of a thematic narrative thing than an in-game rule or defining piece of lore that is strict and always has to be consistent, otherwise everything is ruined and I'm still so boring. Also, good detail with Clementine's dialogue going back to Pink since we're no longer controlling her. I actually like as well that the choice doesn't matter, whatever you do. Maybe it's just because I've been thinking about dying a lot more in the last years, so I'm kind of fine with her not dying. The game perfectly realigns with Season 1 here, almost copying its entire ending just to have your choice not matter in the end, but in the opposite way. There's a weird contradiction in that, where games are all about the player choice, but they also try to have plots, and this is what Walking Dead Season 1 did so well. It removed your choice in the end because its own story and the impact of that meant a lot more than your own personal involvement in it, in a weird way. It's not all about you, basically is what I'm saying, and Season 4 does that also. For me, this works because I absolutely believe in the context of AJ doing whatever he can to save her, so the choice being almost disregarded works in that way I always like. AJ's whole thing was defying Clem, defying your choices about things that didn't really matter anyway. I forgot to mention a scene from episode 3, or maybe intentionally left it out to mention here, but at one point AJ starts talking a whole lot of cheese about death, about Clem one day getting bitten and how it's inevitable. Even here, he defies the supposed plan in favor of the two being walkers together, but following the conversation and James's outburst, clearly that didn't seem like a great plan. I love the idea or intent of having AJ throw spanners into your choices, the choices Clementine tries to make for him. The game has almost been posing scenarios where Clementine would have defied Lee or believed that he didn't always have the best idea, and as mentioned, AJ is not a carbon copy of Clementine. Further into the apocalypse and growing up in it, AJ probably feels more at home than anyone else, so why wouldn't he think he knows best, especially when he's only governed by what feels good or safe, regardless of the morality of it. Clementine will leave or shoot Lee because that's what he asks her to do, and she has no reason to defy him, but AJ takes matters into his own hands because either way, Clementine is fairly likely to die here, so why not have a swing? That was almost poignant, I guess. So it works in a juxtaposing Season 1 way, it works in a unique perspective way, and it works kind of in that meta way of contextualizing the game's set outcome. Why'd I say like outcome? The game's set outcome. The game kind of regresses back to Season 1's simpler presentation, where you get the one ending and you can't change it. It worked a fuck ton for that game, so I can see why. If the choices did matter, Clementine could have died, but since the original design philosophy was the illusion of choice, they foregoed this branching opportunity for instead a definitive, unquestionable ending to the series. Well, maybe not ending, because even though the game is literally called the final season, I'm sure they'd have found some way to continue things, but if they really weren't going to, and Clementine is just alive no matter what, I think that's kind of neat. But let's just be totally real here. Did you really think they were going to kill Clementine in any fashion? Would it have been right to? Did you want them to, just for the sake of your own personal choice? I don't know, man. I think I already played that one. And with that, I think we're done.
Oh no.
Yeah!